Chapter 7, Part 2, The Valley of the Masters. I stood there in front of this powerful individual. It had to be powerful, I thought, to have such complete control over the beast that brought me here, these masters as they called themselves. So I stood there for what seemed like a very long time. The slave was not speaking to me at all. She just sat there in her silence. So I went first. "Hello?" I said softly. "I am lost. It seems I have lost my way. Can you help me get back to the University of Life?" There was another moment of silence, and then the creature spoke. "Is there a right way? Is there a wrong way to do that?" it said. Then another moment went by. "What should I do, masters?" she said. "Tell me what to do. What is correct?" she said as she looked back at the restless group of masters standing throughout the cave. I didn't know what to say. I was looking for redemption, for help, for pity, for anything. These responses didn't make sense to me. Then the slave looked over at the group of masters huddled there and spoke to them in a rather weak voice. "My plebs, my masters," she said, "come fill me. I'm empty." Then half of them ran over to her side and began to bark out orders, the same orders they were barking at me, their captive. "You are wrong," they spouted. "This is a fact," others yelled. "This is the truth." "What are you really talking about?" "This is not what I'm talking about." And they went on and on and on. Then the slave looked it up again and said, "Oh, my passive masters, come fill me. I am empty." And the other half of the group ran over to her and began yelling again. One said, "You hurt me. You're mean. That's a hurtful joke. I can't stand it. You're giving me a headache. What are you going to do to fix that?" Then they all stopped and looked down at the slave. "Do we need to do any more?" one of them said in a demanding tone. I was totally confused. I had no idea what to expect from this strange group. I was dealing in a world I had never seen before. Then it became clearer. These were the masters and the slaves that Turtle had talked about in the last class. This was it. These were the masters and the passive masters, and that was the slave. They were all right here. Then I thought to myself, maybe I've seen this. Maybe I have seen this before. This kind of reminded me of something inside, something I had personally been through before. As I stood there, scratching my head, frozen there in time with my lizard on my shoulder. Then they all looked at me, all of them on cue, and all at once they turned their heads and looked over at me with a devilish stare. The slave popped up just a bit, cleared her throat, and said to the group, "I will not stop you. I will not tell anyone what you have done. Go, masters, do as you wish with this one." Now I was mortified. My lizard, my small gray scalloped newt-like friend, jumped off my shoulder and onto the cold rock floor. He ran, scrambling, jumping up and down, running about to and fro between the rocky walls and myself. I looked at our situation. It was freeze, flight, or fight. Those were my choices. The only one that was possible was fight. I was trapped and there was no way out of this dungeon. I thought this was it. I was about to die as they approached and grabbed me. "Off the side of the cliff," they yelled. "Into the well," shouted another. I was dragged like an animal to the edge of the very wide, dark, bottomless pit and held over the side. This was it, I thought to myself. This was my end. I closed my eyes. I waited, holding my breath as to cushion the dreadful fall that was about to take place. Then, out of the dark corner of the cave, I heard a voice, that deep, confident, powerful voice of hope and transition. It was the voice of Alfred the Turtle. He came in through the entrance just in the nick of time, and as he stood there, everything stopped. "You can put him down now," he said in a calm voice. "He is with me." The giant plebs dropped me headfirst onto the floor of the cave and backed away. I never felt so good in all my life. My lizard, though still very much at attention, was now walking on the ground as if in somewhat control, pushing the large creatures back with his intent to stay alive. And there, standing in the shadows of the cave, was Alfred the Turtle, proud, calm, and in complete control. "Piece of advice," he said matter-of-factly to me. "Never follow the eagle unless you have been directed to do so. You do not have the skills needed to survive here in the Valley of the Masters. This is a treacherous place, as you can see. This is not an easy bunch to deal with. There are skills that are required that you do not have yet. You are in a pretty tight spot, and you will need my help if you are to get out of here." "If I'm to get out of here?" I said. "Can't we just leave now?" "It's not that easy," said the turtle. "These are the masters, and you are in their world now. You just don't walk out. You will need to make a stand if you are to leave. I can help, I can assist you, but most of this work you can only do yourself. Oh, yes, I said. Whatever it takes. Thank you, I said respectfully as I caught up with my beating heart and fleeting breath. I then walked over to the relative safety of the turtle, still surrounded by the mass of masters and the slave. I leaned over towards the turtle and said in a soft voice, So how do we get out of here? He looked at me, his thick, overgrown eyelashes spurting over his big, round, reptilian eyes. It's going to take some work, and we will have to get down to it right away. So listen close to what I have to say and follow my instruction. Now, this is the Valley of the Masters. This is where the masters, the passive masters, are created and where they rule over all. It is also where the slave that created them lives. They work together to create the perfect world for each other and for their immature, childlike postures to flourish. And you, my friend, have fallen straight into the middle of it all. You have fallen right into hell. There is a way out, and I can get you there, but it will take some quick action on your part, and you will need to do most of it. I can only instruct you on what to do and say. You must convert these masters, and it will be a battle that you must wage alone against their embedded will. Sit down, he said to me. I have some background material to go over with you. You must listen close, for there's not a lot of time, and we have to get this right the first time. There will be no second chances. The turtle looked at me with an intensity I had not quite seen him display up until this moment. I leaned in like a football player in a huddle with the big game on the line. Look at this group. Look at their eyes, he said. They are just children, you know, and we have to get them to grow up quick. And the slave over there, it is the most childlike of them all. It wants no responsibility over what is happening here and what the masters want to do with you. I'd never met an adult master or bully who had not grown up surrounded by people who encouraged them to act that way. Furthermore, slaves, it seems, like the slave you see over here, go out of their way to find these masters and bullies and say to them, please bully me, or please be needy so I can take care of you. Either way, they set it up so that they do not have to take responsibility for themselves. That is what you see here. The slave has created an army of masters. Alfred scratched his head. Okay, take a seat here. He pulled up a large rock and we both sat down. I need to bring you up to speed on the factors that dictate the actions of these masters fast. Now this will be a bit more than you learned in a class. This will be kind of like an advanced crash course, mind you. I will tell you what I know, and together, you and I will apply this information directly to them. If we are successful, you will be free to leave this place. If we are not, you may turn into a master yourself and be caught here in this valley forever. Caught in this valley forever? Me? I said. Yes. That is what happens here. These masters are caught, and they do not even know it until someone frees them. They will run rampant and ravage everything in their path. You must free them, and in doing so, you will free yourself from this valley. Do you understand? Let me help you by giving you some background on this. For most couples, this master-slave dynamic is a powerful factor in their relationship. In fact, it is the one overriding factor that creates the most trouble in relationships between couples. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Alfred then got up from his rock and walked over to the nearest master standing just a few feet away. He looked up at the creature and motioned for it to speak, and the master did. You are a freak. In fact, you are the worst individual I have ever known, you bastard. The turtle raised his eye just a little and looked over at the slave sitting quietly on the other rock. Notice the silent, approving smile on her face. Also notice the terrible look deep in her wide eyes. The terrified look that's deep in her wide eyes. Alfred then stopped and mirrored the master, and converting his blatant master talk into its dialogical form, the creature resisted and became quite loud. But Alfred matched his energy and persisted. Then the turtle asked the master about the way he was behaving. Could you act like this at work? Hell no, I'd get fired right away, said the master. So how do you think you get away with it in here? Well, she's never complained, was the creature's response as he pointed his stubby hand over to the slave. She doesn't mind? Asked the turtle. Seems to me that at work they will let you get away and let you misbehave, but that in here your partner makes and perhaps furnishes a wide open playing field for you to act obnoxiously. The turtle paused and walked back to the rock where I was sitting, looking at me silently for a brief moment. Then he went on, "My job is to keep people out of the Valley of the Masters. Keeping you out of here is what the University of Life is all about. To help people learn the skills that will help them avoid this place altogether. My job is to help you become friends with those around you, with all the masters you see here, and with those you will find in your life outside this world." "Yes, I understand," I said. "I have seen with many people, men and women alike, who have come to this and who are now trapped in this cycle of being a bully and always having to always be right. Many have been tossed into the valley because of their anger, and many have been involved in domestic violence. Every one of them, if you were able to have a reasonable conversation with them, would describe being aggressive and violent as children and to throw tantrums in order to get their way. I've heard many stories of how they walked through life successfully intimidating almost everyone, certainly all their domestic partners. This situation, this arrest, this waking up in the Valley of the Masters is a kind of major surprise to them, and once they are here, they are caught in this ugly world they and their unsuspecting caretakers have created. Over time, I have come to think of these people as children who are surrounded by fearful and submissive caretakers. Johnny's having a tantrum. Distract him while we give him ice cream. Find out what Susie wants. She's yelling. That kind of thing. A friend of mine once told me he believed that a major problem in the human Western culture is that children, frightened and fragile, were giving birth to other children. Of course, we tend to blame the bullies, the tyrants, the tantrum havers, missing the contributions of the slave. Here in this cave, here in the Valley of the Masters, the slave is the real power. The masters you see here, all the pitiful plebs that filled this cave, not one of them was created alone. All of them had the help of a silent slave that turned a deaf ear to what they were doing. And now the slave is turning away from this frightful game they are playing with your life. So how do we get out of here? I pleaded. The answer is found in Friend, said the turtle. The answer to you getting out of here is making each of these masters convert from where they are now to Friend. Then, after they are converted, you will face the slave. Convince the slave of its responsibility in all of this. Only at that moment will you be safe. At that moment, this group and the slave that created them will disappear from view. If you are successful, they will all be converted to a friend. They will grow up. I will show you how to do this. That is what I'm doing right now. First, though, I would like to convey to you an important point. It is important to understand that these masters represent postures in yourself. I do not believe that people are masters or slaves or passive masters or friends for that matter. These are simply positions of power between people. They are relationship postures. They have no meaning when a person is alone. I believe all of us can adapt all these postures at any time and that we shift from one to another. We can choose our posture. No one is stuck forever. Remember, my friend, everything in here is about you. And this is your personal journey out of the Valley of the Masters. Do you understand? I nodded my head. Yes, I said. I also believe that none of this is strange or abnormal. This is the picture of life. This is the picture of you. It is my firm belief that as a human baby, you had to learn these skills to survive. Every human begins life as a passive master, as a baby in the hands of friendly caretakers, their parents. By watching and learning from these caretakers, the human children learns to adapt those postures. To me, this seems to be the human design. I see this as the anatomy part of the biological dream. The good news, I think, is that you can grasp where you are now and repair or remediate any damage you have sustained in the arms of your well-meaning caretakers. I believe that once you get a solid and to solidly know how to be friends, you will stay there. Remember, everything in here is about you. These are aspects of you. All these masters here in this cave are aspects of you. Remember the last class you took on Master-Slave? Remember the friend position I wrote on the board? This is where you need to go. This is the way out of the Valley of the Masters. Now, I would like to share how it seems to me that we ever become to acting master or slave or passive master in the first place. I want to validate you as you find yourself acting in these ways. But first, let me share a point I must make about growing up. Growing up, you see, is an important aspect of all of this. It is an important part of getting out of the Valley of the Masters. For some years, my wife and I were friends with a couple who raised a wolf. For years, they worked with the wolf. Kainai was the dog, Indy, to help, and Indy was the other dog, to help kids and adults become more knowledgeable about the issues of the wild and the domestic, the need both have for each other. They would take Coney and Indy to school all over the place to let children see the project called Windy Serenity. Coney died recently. Watching the two canines together was, for me, a great lesson in neodomy. This term refers to the tendency to display childlike, infantile, or youthful behaviors in an adult of the species. Coney displayed adult canine behavior, while Indy was characterized by puppy behaviors. Walking through the forest together, Indy would dash off after a squirrel like Coney would, and Coney would not even seem to notice. I came to see how much, as humans, you see neoteny as well, the retaining of childlike traits in your culture. In many ways, I've come to see human childhood practices through this lens. How often do humans try to keep their children acting immaturely? Parents often say, I don't want them to grow up. If you want to see adults acting like children, consider the Congress of the United States. Given an understanding of this, I think it is easy to see how all the postures of master-slave are just adults acting like children. Alfred looked around the cave. The group of plebs was standing there, huddled in a mass at one end of the dark cavern, standing between the slave and me. I will need to give you some background on the different aspects of the master-slave relationships if you are to have a chance against them. Let's take the passive master aspect first. This is a very powerful type of master. They are all here, huddled in the group over there. If you're acting like a passive master, take heart. I believe you were born that way. All humans were. All human babies begin life as completely dependent, irresponsible, little needy creatures. One friend reminded me that babies are like little suckers. Their need for resources like food, comfort, attention, warmth, cleanliness, etc. is pretty obvious. Also, their sense of passive expectancy is pretty obvious too. They want what they want when they want it. If they don't get it, they try to create distress in their caretakers. A baby relaxes when it senses that others will meet its needs. I remember being in a large group of thoughtful turtles. We were contemplating why it is that human men in your culture do not make a fuss more often. One fellow turtle, which had lived in Australia, said it was very rare among aborigines to hear babies crying. He said this was because caretakers tend to be so wonderful and watchful of babies. All they have to do is show a little uncomfort, and someone will interrupt their need and meet it. No crying. A second turtle from Africa said that normally in his village of hunters, the same thing occurred. Babies were indulged to a degree that clearly met their needs. I think this is where the phrase, a village takes a child, it takes a village to raise a child, comes from. Kids are designed for the extensive availability of caretakers. The last turtle suggested that the reason human babies cry so much in your culture is because there are so few reliable caretakers around, and the available ones are often not too reliable. The posture of an adult passive master is characterized by making a complaint and then waiting for someone else to fix the problem. The way I see it, passive masters somehow, more or less, miss the healthy child rearing that would have taught them to take care of themselves and to earn whatever it is that they need. This has created a situation of unfulfilled expectations. You will learn about expectations later, if you get out of here alive, that is. I see people in this posture spending much of their time finding and cultivating people who will take care of them and being shocked when people are not cooperative. Probably the childhood caretakers of passive masters did not introduce their child to making the transition to adulthood. They may have indulged the child for too long, or perhaps protected their child from facing consequences they earn. I imagine they neglected their child's needs for development. My guess is that their interactions involved the caretakers acting from the slave position. Certainly, they help their children retain its immature passive expectations. Adult recovery from this expectation stuff is difficult, but the little king or little princess has to be dethroned in some kindly fashion, and the person taught to earn what is gotten. I believe that people acting as passive masters after being dethroned are ready to learn adult relating skills. You may see some of that in you. Look close, for it will help guide you out of this world and back to a much safer place. Now, the turtle said, what about the master? If you're acting as a master, take heart. I believe many people work hard and often in training you to become this way. The way I see it, as a child, the passive master learned how to get their needs met by switching into being an active master. They would distress or punish people to get their needs met long after they should have learned self-responsibility. Punishing worked for them. Often these events can be seen in kids who throw tantrums and get what they want after and seemingly as a result of their tantrum. Their caretakers may have acted fearfully in response to their explosive behavior. This is a principle. There is a principle in nature. If it works, do it again. Masters as children have learned that emotional outbursts, threats, etc. work. Of course, this bullying behavior works only if the audience of caretakers nearby give in. Thus, I have never seen a person aggressively bullying or being disrespectful that had not experienced over and over that those behaviors get what they want. This is the source of that startle reaction that many people involved in domestic violence situations have when the police arrive. What, you mean you won't do what I am demanding? By the way, learning this comes from two sources. First, by watching others bully people and get away with it, and second, by practicing it yourself. Perfect training in this, I believe, is represented by military boot camp, which is the ultimate world of the master-slave relationship in your Western human culture, and one of the only places that I think it produces a desired result. I spoke to a fellow a while ago who has been found guilty of domestic violence. After he had thoroughly told me his version of the situation that happened, I asked him, how many other situations do you recall that were like this in your past, either you towards her or her towards you? His reply was hundreds. I see masters spending a lot of their time finding and cultivating people who will submit to them. These are the slaves. When they find them, they have to keep on guard and work hard to keep these partners submitting. Eventually, masters, people who bully a lot, will often experience a great deal of loneliness and isolation. Getting people to do what they want as an adult may seem to create a sense of order in the short run, but doesn't make friends in the long run. Probably the childhood caretakers of masters did not introduce their child to boundaries and to the skills of being mutual friends. My guess is that the caretakers were frightened of their child's emotional and physical outbursts and thus tried to placate the acting out child. This behavior, of course, reinforces the acting out and leads to an acting out adult. I think the caretakers acted as slaves to their child and thus created these people we often casually vilify with the name monster. As we see here in the Valley of the Masters, it is the slave that has created them and needs them in order to survive. Adult recovery from this bullying habit seems pretty straightforward to me. Their dysfunctional acting out behavior has to be shut down, firmly and kindly. I believe masters are ready to have their distressing and punishing behavior stopped and to learn adult relating skills. This is going to be part of your goal when you confront these masters here in a short while. The turtle paused. The room was filled with a striking calm. The group, so loud and strong, was now quiet as they listened in on what was to come next. It seemed they had heard the turtle talk of this before. I looked at the group standing there as they started to part. A clear right side and left side began to emerge, parting like the Red Sea to reveal a distant shore. The distant shore that I began to see was that of the slave. The masters were splitting into two groups. On one side were the masters, on the other side were the passive masters. Look at them, Alfred said. They are preparing for you. They are preparing for battle. Let us continue. The last posture I must cover here is that of the slave itself. If you find yourself acting as a slave, take heart. While I believe many people worked hard in training you to become that way, I believe even more that the future for you is very bright. I believe that you get to grow a soul. It might have been nicer to do this when you were a kid, but no time like the present to start the process. It is the journey that is not started that takes the longest time. I'm here to help you on that journey and to confront and convert this slave you see here. The childhood pathway to becoming a slave involves repeatedly being interrupted. The childhood pathway to becoming a slave involves repeatedly interrupting a normal impulse. The human children, beginning between age 1 to 2, start to reach out and explore. They start a process of separating from caretakers, investigating things on their own, and then returning to those caretakers. In the process, they learn about boundaries and develop boundary skills, and as a result of this process, a child develops the foundation for integrity and a solid sense of self. There are many books about attachment theory that can help you see and understand this process. In order to train a person to act like a slave, caretakers interfere with this normal process. In one situation, a parent challenges the child's independence by dominating or controlling behaviors. Don't do that. The child will resist, often saying no at first because they are doing something healthy and that they are programmed by DNA to do. By repetition, do what I tell you. The caretakers wear the child's healthy impulse down, and the child placidly awaits instructions from the caretakers. This plasticity is the posture of the slave with the master. In another situation, the parent displays distress at the child's independence. It scares me when you do that. The child will resist for a while. By repetition, you are a selfish little kid. Don't you see you are hurting me? The caretakers wear down the child. The child then begins to take care of the caretakers. In some way, this can be seen as an altruistic principle. Taking care of you makes me feel better. This care taking of the adult by the child is the posture of the slave with the passive master. This training can be very strong if the child awaits instruction from one parent and takes care of the other. I find it very common for people to demonstrate both slave behaviors in the same sentence. I don't know how to, I am helpless. To stop you from hurting me, I am to blame for your pain. An example including caretakers might be, Dad, tell me what to do so I will not hurt Mommy. By the way, this is not far from Dad, tell me what to do so that you will stop hurting Mommy. Children seem remarkably sensitive to what looks to them like one parent hurting the other. In both cases, the child aborts the normal pattern of exploration, development of boundary skills, and a secure sense of self. They often do not talk much. If you ask them a question about themselves, they look startled. Self-responsibility are poorly developed or completely lacking. But they do appear to be obedient and fit into organizations where slavish obedience is expected. I believe this posture is also the core of what is called codependence. I see slaves spending much of their time seeking out people who will fill their self-emptiness by ordering or bullying them around or by providing neediness. When slaves find these people, they relax into conformity, or caretaking, or alternately both. Conformists fill many institutions, military, churches, etc., but their dark side is being passive, making space for any tyrants they meet to be free to exhibit their awful behavior. Caretakers fill many other institutions, social services, counseling, medical professions, etc., but their dark side is being tyrannical when disobeyed. Probably the childhood caretakers of slaves did not encourage their children to grow. Instead, I imagine they wanted their children to take care of them. This seems to be the idea of needy children giving birth to children who will meet their needs. The children get to observe lack of self-responsibility in their parents and thus learn it themselves. They also get to learn how to take care of other people and get a sense of worth from doing it. I think this kind of parenting makes for the most difficult adult recovery of all. This person has to put off self-maturing in the case of taking care of others. I've observed that self-maturing is a prolonged process, and learning the adult distinction between caring about others rather than caring for others is a bit tricky. I believe that slaves are ready for exploration of themselves, development of a secure sense of self, and to learn adult relating skills. I sat there at my rock. The dark glow gray of the cave was kind of getting to me at that time. The walls seemed to be closing in, and I didn't feel much like staying much longer. I looked at the turtle. Okay, I get it. So this is all about me. This is about my relationship with others. Okay, I get that. So I'm a slave in relationships, and my actions created all the masters in my life. So now, what should I do? How can I start taking care of myself, be responsible for myself, and quit making the other the decision maker? Is that what I need to do to get out of here? This place is really scary for me. I need to do something. Can we get out? Can we get on with this? I pleaded with the turtle. Okay, said the turtle in an annoyingly calm voice. I hear that this is getting to you. Did I get that right? Yeah, it's really getting to me, I said. It's starting to freak me out. It's really starting to freak you out. Okay, I got that, the turtle said again. The turtle paused and looked at me with those big reptilian eyes. Take a deep breath and listen, because I want to be very clear, he said. You do not have to do anything. What? I said. And he continued. I found that helping you to change begins firmly with me refusing to take responsibility for what you do. These aspects of the master and the slave that you see here, these creatures that you find so scary, they exist only in you. For you to overcome the valley of the masters, you need to make friends with yourself. Furthermore, I want you to realize that all that I say does not contain a single fact. Because I've said nothing, because I've said something does not mean that it is true. I want you to be clear that what I say is full of opinions, ideas, and beliefs. I am very clear that what I say is the sum of my opinions and thoughts and conclusions and nothing more. I say this not to confuse you, but it is important that you understand that these are my best beliefs and nothing more. My thoughts plus $1 get me a cheap cup of coffee. If these ideas have value to you, you have given them that value. So relax. This is nothing more than an invitation to you. It is an invitation to join me in my understanding about master-slave, and it may take you out of the Valley of the Masters. I now invite you to join me in friend-friend. I caught my breath. My lizard stopped his stomping about at my feet and stood still. The turtle raised his spiny head. He was inviting me out of the perceptions that had ruled my life for so long, but it was hard to accept. It was hard to take responsibility for what I was about to do. He was inviting me to take a step forward on my own, not taking his words as fact, as a master statement, but coming along and knowing that it is there for the taking if I like it, or for the leaving if I like it. This was important to the turtle. It was important to the process. If we were to continue the discussion around the notion of friend-friend, that I had to take responsibility for accepting it. Friend-friend was my way out of the cave and the Valley of the Masters. I accepted this invitation with a silent nod back in his direction. And then he continued. As I teach this model, I find that while it is now much, much easier to see master or slave or passive master, something tends to get screwy in people who start looking for it. Perhaps this is just a sign that others are feeling the same kind of panic I felt when I came across Master Talk. What I am thinking is that it is easy to become very critical of others and to be self-critical and a bit perfectionist and sometimes cruel. The temptation to speak up immediately when you witness these behaviors seems strong. And I don't think it very helpful. I have trouble with this. I think a big piece of the problem is that all these behaviors are so childish, which can be used so negatively. So I sit here wondering, what is the best way to approach it when I see myself acting childish, or see others acting childish? I have two thoughts on this, said the turtle. The first is that I want to be kind and remind myself and others that they or I can do better. Long ago when I was learning to mediate, a teacher told me a way to approach my rebellious mind. My mind wanted to focus and busy think. I was trying to get my mind to relax, to be at peace. The teacher said, visualize a 4-year-old boy walking in a park with the most wonderful, kind grandfather you can imagine. The boy bounces around like a puppy, looking at everything. He can barely contain his aliveness. The grandfather repeatedly, gently, and kindly reminds the boy to come back to the path they were walking on. Now let your mind be the little boy, and let your intention be the kind grandfather. And so I suggest you be kind and gentle in reminding yourself and others. A second thought is that acting childish is pretty close to acting childlike. I see nothing wrong with responsibly acting childlike. I love the idea that kids play at being adults while adults just play. If I want to act out like a bully, that is not a problem when I am in some situations. Acting in a play or being a drill sergeant, but if I do it at home or on the job, then I'm in trouble. If I want to be a passive master, and that temptation is delicious, doing it at a Turkish bath or getting a manicure is really desirable. But if I do it in the family, conflict will arise. If I want to be a slave, and sometimes the relief from responsibility is delicious, I can do it on the job if I am a short order cook or a taxi driver. But if I do it at home, eventually trouble will surface. When I studied abnormal psychology years ago, my teacher pointed out his true definition. Abnormal psychology was a study of people who were acting in a way that bothered someone. If everyone is happy, don't mess with it. If it is working for everybody, don't change it. When it stops working for one person in a group, I think it is best for the whole group to stop and learn. Alfred then stood up. Watch this. He then walked over to the left side of the split group of masters and pulled out one from the group. Again, as before, Alfred just stood there. It seemed he didn't take much to get the masters to start talking. So the turtle motioned with his right hand, and the passive master began to talk. I have a problem, he said, and laid an entire issue out before the turtle about his wife leaving him. Alfred mirrored and validated as he spoke, and finally the passive master's story came to an end. Then Alfred looked over at me. He thinks I'm going to turn into a slave and take care of him. But I'm not. I'm going to stay in the friend position. The turtle then turned back to the passive master. Sounds like quite a problem. What are your options? Do you plan to deal with it? Any ideas? Alfred then looked over at me. He's now going to shift into the slave position. Watch. The pleb then continued. I came to you. What should I do? Alfred then replied in a swift by staying in friend and saying, well, I have lots of ideas, but I don't know if they'll be useful to you. Would you like to hear some? The master then shifted into the full master position and loudly snapped. Look, it's your job to fix this. Tell me what I should do. What good are you? Isn't it interesting to see all the positions, the turtle said. Alfred then walked back over to the rock where I was sitting. I'm showing this because I've noticed that people tend to see the masters, the bullies, as the bad ones. I believe that no position on the master-slave side is any better than the other, and that we can all be in any one of them at any time. Look around the cave. They're all here looking at you, waiting for you to make your move. They're waiting for you to try to get out of here. The way out is not going to stop being a master or a slave or a passive master, but to grow up and shift to friend side. This is the side of being dialogical, of having communications in a way that both sides feel heard. This is the side of anatomy and autonomy and of sharing power and responsibility fairly. I believe the way to make this happen is for you to show them by doing it yourself. The way out is to guide these masters to join you in being friend. This is the opposite of being passive. Leading is being proactive. The situations you are facing here are full of passivity. You have to focus on your goal and tenaciously hang on to it. You have to stay grown up in spite of the temptations to slide into the notorious behaviors you have seen displayed here in the valley. Alfred looked at me inquisitively and intensely. This is not easy. It takes work. It takes lots of practice, but I think the work is very specific, straightforward, and clear. Are you ready? Yes, I replied, I'm ready. Okay then, let's get about fixing it. About getting out of here, he said. He rubbed his calm chin a little and looked around with that inquisitive grin on his face that I had grown to know.